Okay, I think we might just get started with the introduction. We've got a good number of people on. I'm sure more people will trickle through.
Yep.
Really, really great to see everyone here today. Um, my name is Jamie McIver. I'm hosting today. I'm calling in from Rutherglen in Northern Victoria. I'm normally based in Melbourne, but here to work with a client today. So sitting here in my hotel room, very, very pleased and proud to be joined here by Andrew and Sam Froggatt from Lead the Way. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, really awesome to have you here. It's so authentic too, with the wood pile behind you. I know that you're on, I think the porch of your country estate. So that's
Farmhouse more
that.
like.
What's that? Sorry,
Farmhouse more like.
farmhouse. That's good. We like farmhouse. So
Yeah.
really great to have you guys here. I do want to just acknowledge as we know, we've got people dialing in from all over the world. And I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians and owners of the lands that we're all based on and dialing in from. For me, that's the lands of the Yorta Yorta people here in northern Victoria. So I just want to acknowledge them and pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. I feel quite proud, maybe humbled by the practice that we're continuing today, which has been going on here for, in the case of the Yorta Yorta people, more than 40,000 years. They've been on these lands practicing this art of storytelling and sharing wisdom, giving and receiving wisdom for the benefit of the greater good, to share, to build on the body of knowledge that we all have access to. That's obviously what today's all about. And I just love the fact that I can sit here where I am and think about how that's actually something that's been going for so long, so many thousands of years. So just wanted to mention that to start off with. So today's our global chat session. We're going to really deep dive into this leadership topic around how we can, I guess, find novel ways. And this one is around using working with horses to help open people's minds up. So once again, really glad to have Andrew and Sam joining us. This is being recorded just so that people know and will be made available for people to review and share with others that might have missed it later on. If there are any questions that people have along the way or insights or comments, please feel free to keep them coming into the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on multitasking, doing my best to multitask today. And I'll keep an eye on that and do what I best to bring those questions in. We will save some time at the end too, just for some more focused Q&A. So anyway, we'll get started. Yes, Lisa, great wine in Rutherglen. It's unfortunately not what I'm here for this time, but next time I'll be coming back and making sure I spend some time doing that. So first of all, how did we get connected with Andrew and Sam? The truth is, Andrew and I are very, very good friends from a long time back. We've been friends for more than 30 years. So basically, since we were in our late teens, I think we probably first connected. And it was probably a number of years. We lost contact a little bit. We were in different countries doing different things. And it was probably about 18 months ago, we reconnected at a friend's house and suddenly realized that we had both landed in the same game of leadership development in very, very different ways. And we said, hey, we should talk more and we should look at what the synergies are. And it was awesome to be able to meet Andrew's wife, Sam, for the first time as well. And we all got on like a house on fire and knew that this was a great topic to be bringing in. So glad to be able to share that with you. Maybe I'd like to hand over to Andrew and Sam just to give a bit of an introduction about who you are and how you came to be in this position to be working with horses in this way.
Okay. Okay. I'll stop. I'm Sam. I was originally from England. I've been in New Zealand since 2001. Typical Pom. I came for a ski season and never left. Ended up falling in love with the country and staying. Um, I have always been passionate about horses. That's just something I've always been massively into, and I did lots of pony club stuff in England. I have a degree in archaeology, and I have quite a diverse work history. I have I started off doing my leadership stuff initially through the Territorial Army in England, which I did to pay my way through university, and then I went to Royal Military Academy Sandhurst and completed my basic training there. Decided I didn't want to do the army full time, and then headed into working in the corporate world, working for a merchant bank in London. Got taken over by Credit Suisse, and I went over to work for Credit Suisse for a couple of years before I came over to New Zealand. And then I spent 16 years in hospitality and tourism in Queenstown, working in the luxury lodges and various tourism activities over there. And then I met Andrew about 10 years ago. Went to a horse clinic. I had a horse I was having issues with, and it was a bit cheesy, but he came along and sorted out the horse, and so got the girl. Decided I'd better stick with him. He could fix my horses in the future. And we've been together ever since. And he brought me into doing Lead the Way. It was something he'd started doing before I met him. I'll pass on to you then.
Yeah, I suppose my sort of journey started when I was about 10 years old. My grandfather had a farm quite close to Wellington where we lived, and I saw I always sort of loved the farm and the animals, and saw some very sort of old school traditional people sort of being quite brutal with horses. And even as a young boy, I sort of knew that wasn't the right way. And it wasn't until years later I came across to Melbourne actually and did a horse business management course and saw this sort of newer horse whispering type technique. Loved it. Spent some time over there, learned everything about it, and then work with probably 6,000, 7,000 horses now. Bit of a master at sort of building relationships and sort of bringing out the best in them. And it wasn't until one day I was actually working with a woman's horse in the Wairarapa, hour from Wellington, and her father was there for Sunday lunch, and he sort of I was talking away about what I was doing with the horse, and he said, "Wow, this is fascinating." He said, "Everything you're doing with that horse, I'm trying to teach corporates and formal leadership." So the idea was born, and things started to kick off from there, really. Yeah.
And that's really opened up for you guys a whole new world, not only for yourselves but for other people. How did that sort of emerge from that idea? Was it something that just went bang really quickly and caught on? Did it sort of take a long time to convince people to take it seriously?
Yeah, it's sort of at the time he was working with the old New Zealand Dairy Board and New Zealand Pharmaceuticals. So we did a few where I sort of took some horses and he facilitated it, and sort of developed a property. And we've sort of found there were a lot of people sort of looking for something different, looking to get out of the classroom, looking for something. So we sort of first started off with companies like Transpower, New Zealand Post, and then moved quite quickly into sport. And that's been one of the practical people. You don't get the best out of them by sitting them in a classroom talking at them. Doesn't mean you can do leadership. So they were really looking for something different along that practical element. And we also bring a lot of video analysis in, which is quite powerful too in terms of raising self-awareness and making changes. So yeah.
Fantastic. And I mean, I'm very privileged to have spent a bit of time with you guys with horses and
Yep.
experienced the approach that you take. One thing I noticed about the two of you, and I haven't shared this with you before, is I noticed you both have quite different relationships with the horses.
Yeah.
The way that you interact with the horses is quite different. I was wondering, is there some kind of a good cop, bad cop sort of thing happening there, or how do you explain that?
I think it's just our different personalities. Um, Andrew's very direct. He's all about the black and white, and I think I'm a little more dealing shades of grey, and that probably comes across in the way we interact with the horses. I think certain things underpin that are really important. Those principles of setting standards and building good relationships, having good communication, being conscious about everything that you do. So the horse knows where it stands, knows what you're asking of it, and being fair, making sure you praise when they do well, you letting them know when it's not right, and giving them opportunities to try again. And I think that we both do. We just have slightly different ways of going about it.
Works really well too. The sort of different styles, I think, from the teaching coaching point of view. Sam might explain something a certain way, and then I've got a different way of explaining it. So So that works quite well, in which we can really sort of get the point across in different ways sometimes. Yeah.
Probably a good reminder too. I mean, we see this in just about everything we do in life. There's not necessarily just one way of doing one right way.
Mm.
There are different ways, different styles.
Mm.
So it's not about being like Sam or being like Andrew. It's what is the approach, the style that suits me and works for me. So it's a good reminder of that.
Always say from the coaching or teaching point of view too, if someone doesn't understand or someone's not getting it, it's not their problem, it's yours. And if you're good at what you do, you need to be able to explain that in 10 or 15 different ways until they do get it. So you got to have that ability to come at it from different angles and
totally
understanding.
Yeah. Great insight. Tell us a little bit about the program, the type of programs that you run. What do they kind of look and feel like, just to give people a sense as to what you're actually doing with the horses and with people?
So we run a 2-day courses. Everybody beforehand gets a questionnaire, so we get a little bit of a feel for their personality, and all the horses have their own personality. So we try and match people up with personalities that'll an appropriate fit for things, for challenges, for things that they want to work on. And then when they arrive, we do a little introduction, and then we go down to the arena. Andrew does a demonstration with the horse to show the exercises we're working through. And then we do a session in the arena, and everyone gets stuck in. And it's literally, it's throwing people in the deep end. It's like when you first walk out of hospital with your first child, you're looking around desperate for someone to give you some instruction, but you just have to jump in and do it and figure it out. Which is I think is really powerful. It puts everybody on a level. Most people that come have never done anything with horses. So everyone's suddenly on a level, regardless of where they stand in their leadership journey. They're all on a level with the horses.
Nowhere to hide out there.
Yeah, all in the deep end. And I video them at that point. So the video is then looking at how you look when you're out of your comfort zone. And most people are a bit afraid, so they don't realize I'm videoing. They're focused really on their horse, and it's a true chance to see how you look when you're under pressure, what your team sees in you, your little habits that might show. Then we come back in and we look at the videos and we enjoy a bit of a laugh. It's all quite relaxed, and we talk about different the body language between the horse and the person, and the energy levels. Do they match? Do they not? Does the communication look like it's coming across? Are they starting to come together as a bit of a team, or is it still looking really confused? And then we have some lunch, and we have facilitation after lunch, where we start talking into leadership values and principles, and start looking a little deeper at ourselves and thinking about the way that we had reacted with our horses and what had happened. Go back for a second session in the arena, and this time they've got a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more experience. So a second session with the horses, and they've got things that they've decided they want to tweak and change and do a little differently. And then at the end, we put a little more pressure on by getting them to, everybody lines up and they come out one at a time and do a little demonstration of what they've been doing with their horse. And we video that, and then we come back in and watch a second video session, and again talk about the changes between the first and second video session, what people have tried, what worked, what didn't, and then finish up with a bit of a platter and reflections at the end of the day. And then day 2, do you want to talk through
similar format? Day 2, start off with reflections and sort of how well we understood our horse and things. We do another session, another video, then into an obstacle course. We set up about 12 obstacles, quite challenging. Find out a little bit more about ourselves when things don't happen in the first 5 minutes. We talk a lot about the little things, the boundaries, the standards, getting those little things. Are they good enough to be able to withstand pressure? Just like people, when you meet someone for the first time, everything's nicey. What are they like when the pressure comes on? We find out a bit more about them. So we talk a little bit more into those things. All done out of an old farmhouse, roaring fires, great food, good old sort of country values. And I think one of the main things is for 2 days, the busyness of life, people can sort of just focus, get present, get rid of the digital element, focus on themselves, have a look back on how things are going. And sort of in terms of leadership, you got to become the best version of yourself before you can lead others effectively. So have a good look at yourself. And not only at work, we talk about all sorts, energy levels. Are we a 10 at work and a 2 at home? That's not good enough. The families, the balance isn't right. So we talk about the overall effect, I suppose, on trying to be the best we can be.
Leadership's not just bad in the workplace. You come home and parenting's a form of leadership, or you're out in your community and you're working with a community sports group or another organization, there's quite often leadership elements. So,
Yeah,
leadership can look different, but it's essentially the same hat, the same skills are required. So it's about
totally.
being all around.
Yeah. Yeah, we often say better people make better leaders, and better leaders make better people, right? They're not different things. We
No,
are who we are, whether we're at home or at work. Couple of things I'd love to just pick out of what you've shared and go a little bit deeper. One is this idea, Sam, you said right at the beginning, it puts everyone on a level.
yep.
And I know that from my experience, we work with a lot of leaders, and that it's really interesting because sometimes where you want to get to with a group of leaders in a learning environment is to remove hierarchy, remove
Yep.
status, create a safe environment where people can truly relate to each other as equals, right?
Yep.
And that can take time. It can actually take quite a bit of time
Yep.
to get people to that point, to get the insight that helps them to understand or realize how they need to show up in that moment, how that might be different to what they're doing when they're back in the workplace. Yet the way you describe it is that this happens very quickly. I get the sense that breakthrough can happen quite quickly in your environment versus hours or even days in different environments.
I
How is
think
that?
it does, because the horses really don't care who you are. They don't care how many followers you have, how many years you've had in leadership, what you've done, what you're going to do tomorrow, what you did yesterday. All they care about is how you treat them in the time you're holding the other end of the rope while you're working with them. And so that's really leveling. We have an open once a month course that anybody can sign on to come along. And we invariably have a wide range of leaders. We've had people that have been in their 50s and their 60s that have been leading for 30 odd years. And we might have somebody who's in their early 20s coming into their first chance at leadership. And so in theory, they're in different places. But by the time they've been out there with the horses, neither of them has any knowledge of the horses. They're both put back to being beginners. They're both in what we talk about as the learning pit, the uncomfortable place where you're learning something new. And sometimes something works and sometimes something doesn't. And we're back to trial and error and the most basic form of learning. And I think putting everybody in that same spot builds connections because they can see each other struggling and each other having little successes and having little failures. And suddenly everyone's on a level. So then when we come back into the house and we start talking about it in the facilitation and we start pulling it apart, people are really interested in the comparisons between what's worked for someone and what hasn't, what their experience was with their horse versus what my experience was with my horse. And so that's where we start getting the more experienced leaders may share some of their insights that they've got, but some of the younger leaders can also have real light bulb moments that get older leaders to think about things in a new way, maybe to remember back what it's like at the beginning of their journey. So it really, we get a really interesting melting pot with different perspectives, and oftentimes people are from very different. Uh, no, I was going to say workplaces, different industries. So,
Yeah.
in the same one, we might have a high performance sport coach, we might have a lawyer, we might have a farmer that's stepping up to being head shepherd off a big station somewhere. So their experiences or where they apply leadership is very different when they go back to the workplace, but the principles are all the same. And they start to realize very quickly that leadership's all the same wherever you are. And I think that brings everyone to a level. And from there, they're simply sharing, watching each other, taking step after step as they grow and figure through the experience we give them.
Yeah.
One more thing to add there is, especially we do a lot of high performance sport and top sports coaches, and they are not used to being average at something. They're at the top of their game, highly competitive. So it's a really good leveler for them. And from a coaching, leadership, mentoring sort of, it reminds them of what it's like to be back.
When you start out on the back foot and you don't know anything.
Because they're so competitive, they don't stay that way for long. But it's a good little reminder of the people coming through underneath them, what it feels like for them.
Yeah, look, when I hear you talking about that environment that you're putting people into, for people that are familiar with the work of Dr. Ron Heifetz, who talks about adaptive versus technical challenges, and increasingly in organizations, we're facing into adaptive challenges.
Yep.
But we might misdiagnose them as simple things where my old tool set, the things that have made me successful so far, I can just bring that out again and that will help me. But what you're describing is, well, no, your tool set as a high performance coach isn't going to help you here. This is a very different environment. And that idea of getting, different views, a diversity of inputs, ideas, insights, removing the hierarchy, which actually doesn't help you necessarily in this situation, because being older or being more experienced may make no difference if none of you have worked with horses. Like, there's some magic here. There's some magic in terms of simulating that environment in a very real way. The other thing that I hear you guys talk about quite a bit, and I've heard it a number of times already, is learning about myself. It helps them learn about themselves. If I'm learning to drive a car, I'm learning about the car.
Yep.
Right? Why is this different? Why is it that with a horse, I'm learning about myself, but if I'm learning to drive a car, I'm learning about the car?
Yeah. I suppose the beauty with working with the horses, they act as an emotional mirror of us. So they absolutely mirror exactly what they. So it's very, very clear if we're getting things right or not getting things right. Same thing, I suppose, with the use of the video we use. It's you could tell someone 1,000 times they need to change, but they don't change because they can't see themselves. Sport use a lot of video, not so much. So corporate, I suppose. So that's really, really powerful. As soon as we do a session with the horses, come up and have a look at the video. The first one's usually the worst, a little bit outside the comfort zone, a bit timid, feeling your way a little bit. And they go, wow, that's how I look. Okay. The beauty with horses, we can trial and error. Can't do that quite so much with people.
They're very forgiving.
Yeah, they forgive us. So it's a chance then to go out and we especially, we found that the horses will show up in the first 2 minutes of someone's how they are in real life, I suppose. If their boundaries are pretty slack, the horse will walk all over them. If these standards, if their energy levels, so they might come and see themselves on the big screen and go, wow, I look really flat. We talk about physical presence, how we're communicating, feedback and praise. So it's happening right in front of you, and you can't really deny that.
I think I think it's because it's all about relationships. When you're working with a horse, each horse has a very distinct personality. So it's the same, it's similar in that respect in working with people. And we see so many times, as Andrew says, people will come along and the habits that are ingrained in how they communicate to other people, how they behave around other people, they do the same thing with the horses. And some of the reflections, people come back and go, oh, yeah, I've got a guy on my team who's just like my horse. And yeah, I felt myself just behaving the same way, responding the same way. But I think because our communication with the horse is non-verbal, it makes us so much more conscious about how we're communicating. And because it comes down to relationship, that's where all your issues in the workplace come from, either communication or relationship. And it's the same with training the horses. If you can't communicate with the horse, if you can't build a relationship, you don't get anywhere. You can't train anything. You can't get on ride. It all becomes dangerous. Just the way it becomes toxic in the workplace. So when you're out there working with the horse, everybody's focus is entirely on the horse in front of them, because they have to, without words, you have to realize that everything the horse does, whether it takes a step forward or sideways or throws its head up, it's giving you feedback on something you've done. And people start to realize that if they change something they do, the horse changes in response. If everything's going very slowly, if they pick up their energy, suddenly the horse picks up its energy and goes faster. And that's what Andrew means, it's an emotional mirror. If you're naturally a very high energetic person, the horse is generally going to react and can be really reacting, get a big result. Toning that down, and suddenly the horse becomes more calm and more relaxed. And then people start to reflect back to the workplace. Oh, I come here a lot of high energy. I intimidate a lot of people because they actually find me too much. And their reflection can be that if they tone their energy down a little, it might be around certain people or in certain situations, then actually the response from people like the horse, they'll start to come down, they start to find a common ground and things improve. So it's really good for playing.
Yeah, that's really, really great. I think the thing that you said there, Sam, too, around people coming in and trying the same things that they do back, at home or at work. And I think this idea of these very well-worn neurological pathways that we have in our brains, and they're our autopilot habits. And then you bring them into this environment and they don't work. And I know, by the way, I know from experience because I was there with you and it didn't work.
Yep.
And then an opportunity to try something different, get immediate feedback, very, very fast feedback.
Yep.
And I like what you said about horses being forgiving.
Yeah.
Horses being forgiving too.
We tend to say horses are very quick to forgive, but they don't forget. Whereas
Yeah, yeah,
people are not so
interesting.
good at forgiving, but we forget very quickly.
Oh, that's fantastic. Fantastic. Another bit here that I just love to double to click on and go further into, and this is again something I had experience with. I know Wanda has put it in the chat too. You can't hide anything from a horse,
No.
and this was one of the big realizations, big insights I got, is that we probably most of us or all of us perhaps have a mask, have these protections that we put up.
Yep.
There's a certain face that we would like to show to the world
Yep.
because there are certain things we may be uncomfortable about what we really, how we really are. I certainly did my best to try that on the horse.
Rosie wasn't impressed, was she?
She wasn't impressed. I
Okay.
just wasn't. Still don't understand why she wasn't impressed with the cowboy boots. I don't think any of us will ever know that. But the sense that I was being these things were being stripped away, and that I was metaphorically a bit naked and vulnerable on the in the ring that day that was an experience I'll never forget. Particularly how quickly that happened and how quickly I was brought down to size. Really, is that is that a sort of a typical thing that you see for people?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely nowhere to hide out there. You've just got to, instead of talking about leadership, so to speak, you've just got to lead instantly. And they are all different, just like people. Some might be quite pushy and trying to walk over the top of you. You've got to maybe approach things with strong boundaries and things for a start. Others, you might have to be more sympathetic and understand. So whatever is going on directly in front of you, you've got to immediately react
Yeah.
and sort of take charge. So it's pretty powerful. Really gets people out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, it's a real adaptability to be able to understand what is the context
Yep.
Yep.
that I'm in, what
Yep.
is this particular horse personality, what's the situation,
Yep.
and being able to respond to that rather than bringing back in the same old things. Can you give us any famous examples of people that you've seen go through that? I know that you've worked with the likes of Steve Hansen. Those of you dialing in from New Zealand will be aware who Steve Hansen is. For those that are not, he was the coach of the All Blacks for while they were two World Cups. One he was head coach, one he was in the coaching team. Yeah, any sort of interesting stories from that?
Yeah, he was quite a character. He came when he was actually working under Graham Henry through High Performance Sport New Zealand, and they didn't really know until just before they were actually coming to do horses. When he found out, he thought, "Great, I'm coming to do horses." He's got race horses. We set him up on purpose with quite a stroppy little highly strung thoroughbred ex-racehorse. He came in with a little bit of a domineering approach. She said, "No, you're not dominating me." They fought all morning, backwards and forwards. He came in at lunchtime and he said, "Oh, now, no, mate, I know bugger all about horses." He had to go back, change that approach, and for him, he'd probably in positions been able to get away with that approach a little bit early on. Um, so he had to come out and have a look at himself on video. Okay, so I think that's not working. Went out and actually had to go through the basics, build that relationship, and away he went. So we had another not so famous guy. It was interesting. He came in and we said to him, "What do you like at feedback and praise?" He said, "I never do it." He said, "My grandfather never praised my father. My father never praised me. I don't praise the people. I just want them to come in and do their work." And so we actually set him up with a very sensitive horse. He turned into a sook, didn't he?
Yeah,
It's cuddling and patting and
horse wasn't very confident, just needed a lot of praise and reassurance and really building up. And he realized that that's what he needed to do to get a result with her. And he was amazed how well it worked.
and he went back and asked his boss to really help him with his feedback and praise because he finally realised how important it is. So yeah,
Yeah,
we get those
yeah.
real light bulb moments.
We had another one. We had the on the same course we had some of the Silver Ferns leadership group from Silver Ferns, and we had some shepherds off a station in Gisborne. And so the same going through the exercise, it was very interesting watching the two groups work. The guys are used to working with stock. They do a lot of training of the dogs. So when we went through the basic exercises, they took their time on them. They practiced them again and again, made sure the basics were really good. High performance sport girls, very goal dominated, very focused on the end result. So they rushed through things. They were forever going, right, what's the next exercise? What's the next one? They wanted to move on and get better and better. And so kind of rushed through the basics. And then we got to the second session in the afternoon and we get everyone out individually. And the girls just crumbled under the pressure, bit of performance pressure, everyone else watching me videoing. They rushed around and tried to do it. The horses were uncertain, their signals weren't clear, and it all fell apart. And then as the guys had their turn, they all came through and absolutely nailed it. Slow and steady had won the race. And so it was a big reflection for the girls on no matter the time pressures that you've got, it's still important to go through the basics and really build the relationship. And I think that was the difference. The girls hadn't got the depth of relationship with their horse that the boys had. So when the pressure came on, the horses were nervous and uncomfortable and weren't with the girls. And it was a big thing for them to take back that, that
Yeah.
getting sound relationships is the basis of everything.
You got to go slow, go fast, get the little things right. Yeah,
Totally. Look, fascinating. Some of the people on the call will be familiar with the vertical mindset indicator that we do and the different mindset stages that we tend to operate or think from. One of them is achiever, and that was what sprung to mind for me, Sam, when you were talking about the girls being very goal orientated, wanting to get to the end, wanting to win, and rushing through it. Whereas the boys, I heard a little bit more of what we would call redefining, which is taking space and time to explore, to build connections, to build that foundation. I love how you said, Andrew, slowing down in order to speed up.
Yeah.
One of the things we do on day 2 is I've got some confidence after day 1, and we hand out some horses and just observe them on day 2 for 10 minutes. And every single group, usually, they make the same decisions where, because they're confident from day 1, they go out and do advanced movements straight away, and things start to fall apart and crumble. We watch them for 10 minutes, and then I come and give them a little tune-up, little reminder, saying, hey, if you've forgotten everything we spoke about yesterday, the setting the boundaries, the setting the standards, the building the relationship, because your confidence level's high, you've gone straight into basics, but you haven't taken the time to go through the steps. So that's a really good little reminder for them. New person, don't assume they know things. Take the time to put them through your processes and get those little things right. If we don't, when the pressure, when the stress comes on, things crumble and fall apart. So it's a real life lesson for them out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's just a question here I wanted to talk to a little bit from Sarah. So Sarah said that I talked about feeling vulnerable. Interested to hear how I brought that away with me. It's a really good question because it talks about a bit to, okay, we have this experience in the ring with the horse. How do we take that with us and how do we apply it back? Because if we don't, then what's the point? I know that in my case, what was important for me was to realize that I just needed to go through that sense of vulnerability in order to get the value.
Yeah.
In order to get the insight about myself. And that's something that I am able to remember very clearly, and I'm able to take that back away with me. And sometimes what that feels like is I'm in a difficult situation. I feel really, really uncomfortable. I feel vulnerable or exposed. I don't know what the answer is. My temptation is to go back to my comfort zone.
Yep.
And I know that I did this, by the way, on the day, and Andrew caught me. Said, no, you're going back to your comfort zone. Don't give up. You've got to keep going. Hold yourself there. Um, yeah, so it was this reminder that sometimes things just need to be difficult,
Mm.
and you need to
Absolutely.
push through that discomfort, stick with it in order to get the result. So I know that I was trying something harder. I was trying to get the horse to reverse, and it wasn't having a bar of it. Rosie, that is the horse. And then I thought, okay, I'll go back to the easy stuff. And Andrew on the other side of the rink said, "No, hey, look, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing." And sort of, you know, got me to go back, not give up, and push through. So that was something really important that I took away.
Mm.
Yeah.
Horses, I suppose, just like people, if we try and do something and they say, no, I don't really want to, and we just leave it there, they very quickly learn to stand up to us and that we'll back down and they don't really have to do anything. So it's really, really important all the time to have that follow through on what we ask for, and that in turn builds respect.
I think
Yeah.
you referred to, vertical development earlier, and I think this is an important part of it is actually being vulnerable and being in and what I think you guys term it as heat situations where the pressure is on. We talk about being in the learning pit. You're out of your comfort zone. You don't know what to do next, and the only thing to do is to trial and error. It's what is it?
Something's not working, change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Churchill said, if you find yourself in hell, just keep going. It's that sort of
nice.
mindset that when you're in there, we all have those moments as leaders when we're in our organizations and somebody's come along, we're dealing with something, we have no idea what to do. And the team's all looking at you and thinking, oh my God, what do I do? What do I say?
Mm.
All you've got to do, you just got to think, you just have to do it and just keep going. And there'll be time to sit back and assess it later. And it may be right, it may be wrong, but until you do something, you don't know. And the worst thing is to do nothing. So I think we give people that opportunity to feel that and do that and discover what they do when they're in that situation. So then later on, people think back and we've had feedback that people have been talking later on in the workplace and something's come up and they're addressing an issue with a staff member. And somebody else has said to them, well, if that person was a horse, what would you do? And then they think back to the arena and go, right, well, when my horse was doing a similar behavior, what did I do? I either put on more pressure, I pushed them a bit further, or maybe I offered some support and I gave them a bit of praise, or maybe I gave them a break, let them have a reset. We talked through all the different techniques that we use to turn the horse around and get the results in the exercise that we're doing. And they relate all back to the things that we can do with staff when you hit a difficult point, and it gives you things to go through in your head on what you can do to move forward.
That's
And I think
awesome.
that
I mean,
vulnerability is where you need to come from, is being okay with not knowing and jumping in and trying something to get it rolling again.
I think that's the slight point of difference, I suppose, is using horses, something that people don't come across every sort of day. Their lessons are learnt. You know, you don't forget them.
Mm.
We've had
yeah.
companies that have did some of the
Mm.
learning sort of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and this has actually had the highest memory recall of anything they've ever done. They just the horse and the memories come back as opposed to you know learning a whole lot of information and
Totally, totally. That's a really good one. Couple of points there. I just want to recap on a little bit. One is around curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
You really articulated nicely, Sam, is opening people up to curiosity. And the prerequisite to being curious is I've got to admit I don't know everything, right? So I've got to move out of a fixed mindset, admit I don't know everything, and I need to look for more options and ideas. I love your link to vertical development. There's so much heat in
Yep.
what you do. There's a colliding perspectives, different people coming from different industry, different roles, different ways of thinking, and then the time to reflect. And I found that very powerful when I watched the video that I didn't know was being taken of me, and it was confronting, in all honesty, because it's not at all how I pictured myself. It was confronting, and it made me stop and dig deep as to what was really going on. I think that being able to separate from yourself, go up on the balcony, I guess, if you like, and look back, it was a very tangible way of doing that, in fact.
Yeah, we had one lady came along and the horse had been walking all over her in the first session of the arena, pushing around. She was really uncomfortable with setting boundaries and making the horse back off her and just pretty much allowed it to do whatever it wanted to do. And she came in and watched the video, and she ended up in tears sitting on the sofa watching the video. And she said, well, that's my life. She said, my kids walk all over me. My husband walks all over me. Everyone at work walks all over me. And it's there on the screen. The horse is walking all over me. So we had a bit of a chat about it at lunchtime and how she has the power of choice. And to make a different choice, she can change things, and she could change that video. So she had some lunch. We went back out, and her second video looked so different because all of a sudden she was standing up, and she was setting the boundaries of the horse and letting it know what was acceptable and what was not, and deciding what she was going to accept from the horse. And she came and watched the second video, and it was massive for her to realize that she had the choice to make a difference. And the difference was that she changed something in herself. And so the change became visible in front of her. And she really took that back home and said, I'm going to make some real changes in my life. And it was a massive moment to be there and to watch. And it was awesome.
Success builds confidence. Yeah.
That's incredibly meaningful.
And she couldn't hide in the video that she was being pushed around. Finally, sitting watching the video with 7 other people beside her, she could no longer hide and pretend that she wasn't allowing that to happen. Once she'd acknowledged it, she could decide to do it differently.
And I think getting the concept across that you can still be yourself and still be nice, but start to insist and become firmer, but still stay the same. Something we a lot out here. You can still be nice, but mean what you say and get firmer in the way you say.
Yeah, it's almost reconnecting with yourself, isn't it? It sounds a lot to me like claiming your power. So she was able to reclaim some of the power. We see that with leaders a lot who are in overwhelming situations, is they start to feel that they are subject to their environment. They are subject to their
lots of power. And I think there's an uncomfortableness around getting assertive. People want to be liked as a leader. They want to be a popular leader, and they're very afraid to go into being seen as aggressive. But that stops them becoming assertive and holding their ground. And the thing, liking is not enough. Actually, liking comes through respect. We very rarely like people that we don't respect. So unless you hold the boundaries and earn that respect, the liking isn't really there either. And I think people start to realize that with the horses.
Yeah, and sometimes doing the right thing and what's right in the long term won't necessarily make people like you in the short term, right? Sometimes we've got to do hard stuff. So such a relevant lesson. That idea of externalizing the problem. My experience with that was when Rosie wouldn't do what I wanted her to do, I drew the conclusion that my horse is faulty. Is something wrong with my horse? Can I please have a new horse? There's a problem with this one. And so I was externalizing the issue. Well, this can't be me. Look at my boots. So I was externalizing the problem. We see that so much with people that feel that they're subject to their environment, to the external environment. And what the insight for me was, again, Andrew came over and immediately the horse did exactly what I was trying to get it to do. And that was my realization that, okay, no, the horse isn't faulty. And the problems, the issues here, again, reinforcing that self-awareness. So,
and that ownership.
Totally. Yeah. Ownership, which is own that I can make a difference.
Yep.
Yeah. And
then decide what you need. And then the next step is simply deciding what you need to do in order to get that difference.
Totally.
What's the action to get a change?
Yeah. Just before I go into the next point, I just want to mention to people on the call, now's a really good time to start. If there are any other questions, I can see there's one here from Alistair that I'm going to bring in a moment. If there are any other questions that you have in mind, start to pop them into the chat, and we'll do what we can to weave them in to the last sort of 15 minutes or so. I wanted to, while that's happening, there was a point, Andrew, that you made about memories that I just think would be worth coming back to. I was thinking about this from a neuroscience point of view. You made the point that people don't forget this. I can absolutely validate that from my own point of view. But yeah, you mentioned people don't forget this stuff. I was thinking, what is it that enables that to happen? And I was looking at the different what we need to do in order to remember new things like this is we need to be able to activate the part of our brain. This is my understanding, which is called the hippocampus.
Mm-hmm.
In order to do that and embed those new memories, there are three things that are really important. At least three. There may be more. One is pure focus and attention, being really present in that moment. And I know from my point of view, that sense of actually almost my amygdala, I think, was working. I felt a level of danger. You're at ground level. You're not on the horse. So the horse is right. It's a half-ton animal that is right above you. So that, believe me, your focus is there. You're not thinking of anything else.
You haven't got time to check your phone. No.
Yeah. Secondly, the active role that you need to be taking action. To your earlier point, this isn't about sitting in a classroom. This is about acting and forming, new neurological pathways by taking action. And then finally, the point around emotions. If I'm actually activating emotions, whether that's a little bit of fear, excitement, interest, then I'm much more likely to embed the memories and the learning. So that was just something that it just ticks all the boxes, what you're doing from a neuroscience perspective, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, absolutely.
We work quite hard to try and get that right balance where you have a go, you see yourselves on video, you can reflect on that, and then some sort of leadership models and principles to draw out of that. So we've sort of got quite a good balance with the practical, the video, and the theory side.
Yeah. And Sam, you just coming to a question from Alistair here about equine therapy. The example you gave earlier on about your client that was there, that was recognizing behaviours in other parts of her life, sort of felt a little bit in that area, didn't it?
Yeah.
Are you able to share? Is there a distinction between what you do and, pardon me, equine therapy, or are there commonalities? What's your understanding of that?
I'd say there's more commonalities. We're not trained therapists. We don't recognize set behaviors around people beyond what we've seen. And we do see patterns of behavior with people, obviously, with some people coming through and spending time watching and working with them with the horses. We don't do therapy per se, because I feel that the facilitation part would be quite different around how they process the emotions that come up with the horses and the things they recognize within them. Our focus is more on the leadership side and how we can recognize patterns and use them to change how we communicate and relate with others in order to be a good leader. So there's a lot of commonalities there, but I think that the specifics, you have trained therapists when they do the equine therapy with that.
In the past, I've done programs with child, youth, and family along the therapy lines using a trained counsellor and a horse specialist. So I was the horse specialist, and we worked through things like that. I was also asked, there's a place out in Lower Hatipuni where young kids have committed crimes but too young for prison. They had been working, so the 16, they sort of a lockup situation for 3 months, all severely autistic, all had their own minders. The SPCA had been taking puppies into getting them to work with the kids, but they'd never used horses. So I was invited out, and we just took 4 horses out. I did a little talk and a demonstration, and they all had 10 minutes each. So it was just making friends, walking, stopping, setting some boundaries, having a run, maybe backing the horse up. And I followed the guy up a week later for some feedback, and he said, it was fantastic. He said that's 16-year-old autistic boy, never spoken before in his life. When you left that day, he started talking, and we can't shut him up. And we found out that he had the most amazing memory in New Zealand music. He could recite anything. So I suppose that's the power of the horse. I feel like I didn't do a lot. 10 minutes, walk and stop, give it a pat, but something resonated with him. So it's pretty powerful stuff. Horse has been used all around the world now as a real teaching tool for people. Prisons in America are getting inmates to break in wild horses, teaching respect, build relationships. On selling horses, money's going to charity. It's a win-win, getting a 90% turnaround rate. And sexual abuse victims, they don't feel able to relate to people, but horses non-judgmental, non-threatening. Learn to touch again, build a relationship again, and in time relate that back to people. So So using the horse as a real teaching tool across those fields to teach us more about ourselves.
Yeah. It's funny, people talk about how they're worried about AI taking over our jobs. I'm much more worried about horses taking over mine. So
Yeah, you just never know.
it's
They can do a lot.
it's actually really really incredible, really incredible.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the
um,
things, I think that the reason that therapy works is horses as a herd have a way of communicating that it is a feeling rather than a physical thing that you can see. You know, if you have a herd of horses grazing together and one is always on watch looking out for a predator, and as soon as they see something, they instantly sit up and they go tense. They haven't made a sound. They just tense their whole body. And every other horse will swing their head around and look in the same direction. They just feel the tension from that one horse. So they're so super sensitive from being prey animals. And I think that's something when they work with us, but because they're so much bigger than that, when they emanate that, we feel it. And even though some of us are not as strong on the empathy scale, it's so loud we can feel it. And apparently we all have an electromagnetic field around our heart, and the horses, because it's bigger, so much bigger, it extends, I think, up to about 4 meters. So they say that, you know, if somebody's really stressed, you can come and stand beside some horses and their field will meet yours and they'll actually get you to lower your heart rate. And within the
mm,
herd, what they do is they calm each other down. So you have a very excited horse and you put it next to another calm one and they'll bring each other down. And I think that's where some of the therapy actually works on a level below consciousness. It's bodies working together. I don't know all the details, but I know that much. And it's just fascinating.
that makes me wonder. I mean, that's amazing. As a race, how we seem to have lost connection somehow with our, subconscious, unconscious energy, connection with each other.
Yeah.
Maybe we're just in these such busy lives where we're just focused on what's happening around us. There's all these things that horses have and are reminding us of that we somehow seem to have forgotten.
Yes, very true. Very, very true.
I got a question here from Mark about the COVID period. How you guys managed through that? I imagine that created some really challenging circumstances for you to make it through that.
Yeah.
Did we? For the initial one, when New Zealand had a big lockdown for a month, um, we just shut down and we'd stay home with the kids. It was nice to get a month's holiday, essentially. We worked on some bits of the business behind the scene. Um, when we first started up, obviously get-togethers were hard, and we were working a little more with horse owners with problems with their own horses in that space. But as time went on, we brought the leadership thing, but because a lot of it is outdoors, and the room where we do our facilitation it's a veranda that is closed in with plastic curtains that we can roll up. So we endeavored to do as much of our work outside and in spaces where people have lots of space between each other. And so I think we're
Okay.
more uncomfortable rather than sitting in a small enclosed bit inside. And working through that and with masks and things, we were able to continue to offer what we did. And people still came. People still wanted to do it. It was still things they needed. And I think in particular, that focus on relationship and communication was so important when people were working from home and further apart. That figuring out how to connect even over a distance was a big part of the conversations we were having.
Totally, totally. Guy, that's fascinating, and I'm just conscious of the time. People are sort of probably needing to wrap up to go on to other meetings. So, first of all, thank you to everyone that's joined. The engagement and the questions that have come through have really brought a lot to the session. A reminder that we will be releasing a recording so that you're able to go back and view your favorite parts or share it with others that weren't able to make it. Also, just to mention that we're very, very happy to make introductions to lead the way to Andrew and Sam, and by all means contact them directly through their website. It's a great creative way to engage leaders in a I can vouch for it being a very meaningful and impactful experience. Finally, also, and by the way, Devon's just dropped your website into the chat there if people want to access that. Yeah, and look, finally, just to say thank you so much to Andrew and Sam for coming along and sharing what's really just an amazing approach and an amazing business. You're two fantastic people that I love and just so grateful to have the opportunity to interact with you in this kind of context. It's been so much fun.
Yeah,
thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jamie. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. I hope you all have a great day or a great night, depending on what part of the world you're in. Keep an eye on LinkedIn for our, as we announce future global chats. Obviously, this is something that we try and do every month or two. So always great to have people along. Thanks, everyone. Also like to say special mention to Devon, who's been the real magic behind the scenes in getting this happening and making it a success. Thanks, Devon. You've done an awesome job and made the three of us look great. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Devon. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.